Good afternoon and welcome to episode 5, where we're going to do kind of a part 2, probably part 2 of 3 for incident management. And today we're going to focus on notes and communication. We will be continuing where we left off, where we originally populated the fields last week. And now we're going to be looking at additional comments, work notes, short description, watch list, and things of that nature. The YouTube live stream is live, so if you're on YouTube, you can check us out there. We do not have Zoom set up. I think at some point I'm just going to take this off the PowerPoint, but I'm going to leave it for right now. And we have the email address of askservicenow@ucdavis.edu, which is very lonely. Today's agenda: incident management part 2 and our topics of short description, work notes, watch list, additional comments, and we're also going to look a little bit at restricting tickets. If you watch any of the videos that we do, or so far, this is probably going to be, truthfully, one of the most important ones, as this is where what you're doing on the ticket is recorded, and also communication with the customer, and how to properly do it and how not to do it. And we will wrap up with Incident Management Part 3 next week, where we will cover pretty much everything else that we haven't covered so far on the incident form field. Joining me this week, back from hiatus, is Kevin. Kevin, welcome back.
Thank you, Jason.
And Kevin's going to get us started and take us away, Kevin.
Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about what ServiceNow calls the short description. Now, you can call this the name of the ticket, or the email description, or subject heading. What I'm going to do is attempt to create a new ticket.
I don't know if it took. There you go.
There we go. Okay. All right, so Jason spoke about a lot of other categories last week, so I'm just going to skip some of them. We're not going to need to submit this today, so I'm not worried about completing the other ones. Right now, what we're going to cover is the short description field. This is the easiest way to communicate the intent of an incident. So in our case here, I'm going to create one for our presentation. And we're going to call it ServiceNow information. And when we save that, that's short, succinct, to the point information. Now, this is a phone ticket because I'm creating it whole cloth. If this had been an email, the short description is filled out by the subject line of the inbound email. There are also several APIs that tie into ServiceNow where the short description will pull some form of metadata depending on what system is putting in here. But you can think of it as the name of the ticket or the subject line of the email. And it pulls double duty in assisting with the search for knowledge base information on the problem that the customer is having. But before I get there, I want to stop and take a very brief moment to talk about the view setting that we have right now in ServiceNow. Currently, we have it set up to view tabs. This allows us to look at search results as an independent entity underneath short description. The default setting in ServiceNow under System Settings is actually off. This forces all of what is currently tabbed to be stacked in one long scroll. I don't recommend doing that. So in the Search Results tab, you can see that it is copied verbatim the short description into the search, but this isn't a hard value. I know that ServiceNow information is a bit vague, so I'm going to search for something a little bit more specific. So I'm going to say creating an incident. Now that's not going to pull up something in our knowledge base necessarily right away, but it goes to show that you can change what was the short description into a more usable search field. And we're going to go back to the work notes, and I'm going to take a look at what I would consider, and kind of expanding upon Jason's comment, that the most important structure of ServiceNow. So when you create a ticket from whole cloth, you get two fields to work in here. You have additional comments and you have work notes. And additional comments, as the parenthetical states, is customer visible. This is going to send an email to, in this case, myself. The work notes are internal to the incident itself. The customer does not see these. The only time a customer could is if they are also an ITIL user. Be aware that unless you're restricting, which we'll get to later, a ticket, any ITIL user can see the work notes of an incident. So comment with care. Now, this is a new ticket, and so this is showing both additional comments and work notes, but this isn't necessarily how you'll see an incident. So I'm actually just going to simply abandon this ticket.
And a pop-up on my screen has appeared.
Oh,
and we'll accept that. There you go.
Okay, and I am going to, we'll just grab the top one in the queue here. So this is an existing incident that exists in a group within ServiceNow. And I want to draw your attention again to the additional comments and work notes. Now, in Jason's case, they're two distinct boxes, but the default is actually to have a toggle. And you can see that there's a button here on the right-hand side of the screen. And if I click that, it suddenly only has additional comments. The way to do work notes is you then have to check that, and it swaps the box. One of the number one confusions we see from people who either are new to ServiceNow or don't use it frequently is they don't visually double check what box they're typing in, and your systems admin just gave a fantastic internal breakdown to the customer, which may not necessarily be the intent. So while the option is there to save real estate, I'm going to recommend expanding the two just to avoid communication crossfire. And I'm going to go ahead and hand this back over to Jason. He's going to talk about a few other features here in the additional comments.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Kevin. Yeah, I really can't echo enough what Kevin stated about additional comments versus work notes. Oftentimes we see individuals confuse the two. The customer's confused. The analysts working the ticket are confused. Take 5 extra seconds to make sure that what you're about to send is to the group of people you intend to send it to. Occasionally, we've even seen people send what clearly should not be customer communication to a customer. It happens, we all make mistakes, but a couple of seconds here and there may prevent that. Expanding on Kevin's excellent description of additional comments and work notes, you see a couple of icons up here called a watch list and a work notes list. They function the same, but they respond to two different parties. The watch list works against the additional comments. The work notes list, shocker, works with the work notes. And the way this works, it allows you to interact with other people who may not be the caller, in this case, we'll say Molly, and the requested for, if there isn't one, or even anyone in the assignment group. The first icon, this little person with a plus symbol, if you click it, it will automatically add yourself. And by yourself, the person logged in right now with ITIL access to ServiceNow is now added to the watch list of this ticket. The same would work for the work notes list. It will not replace the individual that's already here, Evan. It will just add on to that, and you can have as many people as you want here. The limit of communication is 11. The moment you get beyond 11, we start getting into email stream communication issues. So just be mindful of that. Typically it's 2 or 3 or 4, sometimes 5 or 6, but it's very rare that you need to do more than that. I think at that point it's usually off-channel communication about a particular issue. Now say you want to add someone who's not Jason. I want to add Kevin to this ticket. That's where you click on the padlock icon. And what this is going to do is you have 2 fields available. The first is similar to your experience in typing in the caller field, where you would type the person and it will look against the directory of individuals in the tool. And these could be anyone, faculty, staff, IT people, non-IT people. This is everyone that is in the user table for ServiceNow, and there are tens of thousands of people. And I would add Kevin. The other option is I can just add a personal email address or a non-UC Davis address, and I will put one of my personal addresses, in this case a Gmail address, into the field, and I'll click the mail icon and that will add it to the list. Upon completion of that, I will click the lock icon, which will commit the changes. If I do not click this, it will not commit those changes to add to the watch list. The other option is I can add or remove multiples. And this, it's kind of funky, it opens a new window, but here I could add all sorts of people in one pass. The other option is I can also add a distribution list. So rather than say if I know the 6 people and they also happen to be on a distribution list, we'll say tech people at ucdavis.edu, I could just add that and they would receive correspondence. The work notes list functions the same way, but again, it is only for the work notes. Now, how does this work exactly? It works that when future additional comments are sent, Jason, Kevin, and my personal email address will receive what those additional comments are. It is not retroactive. It will not go back and then send you a dialogue or a digest of all the previous additional comments. It's only from the moment you add them to the moment that you remove them, or the ticket is just no longer used. Say, for example, I just wanted to add that Gmail address to this singular correspondence, but not future correspondence, I would send it and then go back and remove from the incident. The other thing that occurs here with this communication is that the work notes list, as we talked about being related to technicians, will also not send the dialogue of previous correspondence. So just be mindful of that. I think sometimes people assume that by adding it, it's going to give you like full access to this ticket. It is not an access thing. It is just communication for future correspondence from the time that you add them moving forward. We will finalize this segment of our video with restricted tickets. Now, occasionally you might encounter a situation where this ticket has information that you don't want anyone else to see. And who the anyone is will vary. But working off of the tabs, we'll go to View Restrictions. Make sure to left click, not right click. And you can see here you get a little disclaimer. Just because you restrict a ticket, that does not mean that you get to violate the campus rules of personally identifiable information, FERPA or HIPAA. I do not know what either of those acronyms means off the top of my head. Kevin, do you?
FERPA is something with student and HIPAA is something with health data.
There you go. I'm sure there's a federal and yeah, whatever. The good news is that's not part of the exam. You will not be quizzed on it. Checking this box begins the process. The way that a restricted ticket works by default is the active assignment group will only be able to see the ticket. Now this works great if in our example you're a UC Davis box admin. If you're not a UC Davis box admin, you're out of luck. Here's a quick disclaimer. If you're a UC Davis box admin and you decide to transfer the ticket somewhere else, you will lose access to it. Yeah, but Jason, I created the ticket. You're right, you did, but you're not in that assignment group. If you decide to restrict a ticket and you think it might go somewhere else, I strongly encourage you, restrict it and then immediately add yourself to the restricted user list. If you're not supposed to be on it, don't do that. But if you can be on it, do that so you can always track down your ticket. There's nothing worse in the world than, oh yeah, I had a ticket and I restricted it. Do you remember what it said? No, I forgot to add myself and I transferred it off. Oh, and by the way, notice these locks. They look very familiar, don't they? And that's because they function the same way as the additional comments watch list and the work notes list. One thing you'll notice is the restricted group list doesn't have that mail field because that's not relevant. You have to enter a group in ServiceNow, and by group we're referring to assignment group. There's probably more questions on this. Here's the catch with restricted tickets. If you think you should be using restricted tickets, or you need assistance with using restricted tickets, or anything related to this, please ask. Send an email to ITSM, send an email to us, Ask ServiceNow. Don't just start clicking buttons here and assume that you're doing it right. While there's nothing wrong with using restricted tickets, there are criteria that needs to be observed, and there's some due diligence on your part to make sure that the ticket is available for the parties that need to see it. Ask, figure out if it's right for you, then you can proceed with using it. That would be my one recommendation for this part. Kevin, anything to add with communications, watch list, work notes list, anything we didn't cover?
Not from a functionality standpoint. I think we did a dang good job this week.
Excellent. As always, take 5 seconds out to make sure that what you're about to do makes sense. It always is shorter to take those 5 seconds than it is to try to figure out a month, a week, a year later why you handled a ticket a certain way. Always make sure to document thoroughly. That goes without saying, as we talked about last week. Make sure that if someone else looks at your ticket, they know what the heck you're talking about. We will see you in June. We have survived a whole month. We're still on the air. We're still making awesome videos. I'm thinking about quitting my job to become a YouTube personality. Probably not going to go well for me. Kevin?
Only if I get to be your sidekick.
Excellent. Batman and Robin, I've always been a fan of Robin. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you in June.
Thanks for tuning in.